First today, for many of us, the thought of retiring is something we look forward to. But for 88-year-old Eileen Jolly, her decision to stop working was not her choice.
Yeah, the grandmother of four says being forced out of her NHS job has left her humiliated. But not to be deterred by the decision, Eileen took her case to an employment tribunal and won.
Well, we're pleased to say that Eileen's here to share her story alongside her legal team, Mark Green and Anna Illingworth. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here, especially to you, Eileen. So as we said there, you're a mum of three, you've got 4 grandchildren, you worked in hospital as a secretary at the Royal Berkshire for 25 years. You absolutely loved it. You were at the NHS for a lot longer than that. So it was in 2004, you had a bit of a moment at your desk, didn't you?
Yes.
And quite a serious moment. Just explain what happened.
Well, it turned out that I'd had a cardiac arrest. I had no warning, knew nothing about it. I woke up in the intensive care unit and was then transferred to the cardiology unit at the other hospital that existed at the time. And I was there for about a week, and they decided that I should have medication, but also as a backup, an implanted defibrillator.
OK.
Which has been absolutely brilliant. Touch wood until now.
Until now, never had any effect. So apart from that moment in 2004, up to 2014, you had no sick leave whatsoever?
No, none at all.
OK.
And so what was your job? What did you have to do?
Well, originally it was called medical secretary, but in 2015, titles were changed to patient pathway coordinator, which a lot of patients found very difficult to deal with. And also it was announced that consultants wouldn't actually have their own secretary. Everybody would be covering for everybody picking up the phones.
So you worked for breast surgeon Mr. Brendan Smith at the Royal Berks, and who you adored and said he was fantastic to work with. And
absolutely.
And so, how were you up until the point that all of this happened? How were you in your job? Were you confident in your job? Were you happy with your job? Did you feel you were doing your job well?
I loved my job. Mr. Smith was brilliant to work for. He's a brilliant surgeon, very highly thought of by all of his patients. So I was very fortunate. I feel that I was doing a competent job. He certainly didn't have to take me to task for anything, fortunately. So I had no idea of what was going to happen.
And this was part of the problem, really, because in September 16, you were told with no warning whatsoever you were suspended whilst the Trust investigated 3 serious incidents. And these stemmed from how the patients for Mr. Smith were logged. So can you just explain that a little bit further?
Well, Mr. Smith had 2 types of surgical list. Obviously, the cancer list. And then also there were people what were termed non-urgent surgery. They would like reconstruction or symmetrization. And so they were put on a different list to be fitted in as and when he had the capacity, because he was extremely busy.
Of course.
And often did extra lifts.
Absolutely, I can imagine his office must have been. Yeah. So, so this is where the problem started, and they stem from how his patients were logged, and they were described as serious incidents, the way that they'd been logged in, and so in September 2016, you were suspended because of these 3 serious incidents, and the trust launched an investigation. You were called into HR and you were sent home.
Yeah.
And you'd not had any issues, since, as you said, since 1948. So being sent home, what effect did that have on you?
I was absolutely devastated. Absolutely devastated. Nothing had ever happened to me like that, ever. And I just, really, I wasn't sleeping, wasn't coping very well at all. But I had put a good front on everything because my husband was in indifferent health. So actually, I never told him anything.
Not until the day he died. He never knew what had happened.
Eileen, I
Yes,
know this must be incredibly hard. And you went through all of this on your own, and it was shortly after you were suspended you got in touch with legal representation because
Yes.
you needed the backup. No,
It's all
don't
right,
be sorry.
darling.
Please
Don't-
don't be
don't-
sorry.
don't.
It's really painful. It's horrible, and you needed support and you needed help. When she came to you with this case, because the two different lists, there was the urgent and the non-urgent. The non-urgent wasn't your job. That wasn't what you were meant to be looking after.
No.
Did she have a case?
Well, she came to Anna first.
Yeah.
Yes, and absolutely.
And what did you think straight away?
I felt straight away that she would have a very strong case for the way she was being treated. It didn't seem to me that procedures that they were meant to be following were being followed, and everything seemed incredibly heavy-handed and unpleasant, almost designed to be as unpleasant as possible.
Well, in January 2017, she was sacked due to catastrophic failure in performance, had 7 days to appeal, appealed, but then was told it was outside the appeal date.
That's right. Incorrectly.
Incorrectly.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, you as counsel are then hired. When you look at this case, when you took this through the process of the tribunals, which there've been preliminary and then the full tribunal, what were your feelings as to the way that she'd been treated because of her age?
Well, we could see that there was a problem with the procedure, absolutely. And in fact, the trust admitted that they hadn't given her appeal and they should have. But what is more difficult is to prove the reason why Eileen was being treated that way. Was it just because of incompetence, or was it because of her age? And that is always, discrimination cases are always more difficult to show.
So how did you do it?
Well, we had, unfortunately, there were some comments during the investigation from certain of Eileen's colleagues, which were very upsetting, to do with her age, and saying, for example, one of them thought they might find her dead on the floor, which is, of course, very upsetting for Eileen as well.
Yeah.
And we managed to show that the investigator and indeed the decision-maker didn't discount these comments at all. And it looked like they had taken them into account. And Eileen even raised the possibility of age discrimination. But they didn't answer those questions. She put in a grievance and it wasn't dealt with.
And so because Eileen has taken this, seen it through to the end, and because she's now won this case, this is a landmark case. So what will this mean to others?
Well, we haven't heard of anyone who has brought a case at this age before. And it will show that trusts, any respondent, any employer, need to be very careful about sacking people at that age because they assume that they can't be retrained. That was the problem here that the judge found.
The assumptions that were made were the
The assumptions that were made that effectively an old dog can't learn new tricks. No offence to Eileen, of course. But that seems to be what happened. And if Eileen had been younger, they would have retrained her because Eileen didn't know what they thought her job was. And Brendan Smith also agreed with Eileen.
Right.
Well, the Don Fairley, who's the Director of Workforce for the Royal Berkshire NHS Foundation Trust, said the Trust takes staff welfare extremely seriously, along with our responsibility to provide safe and effective care to patients. We acknowledge the judgment of the tribunal and will be considering our next steps. As far as you're concerned, I suppose your advice would be, if you think it's unfair, no matter what your age, then it's a lengthy process, but you fought it.
I would recommend that people do. If they feel able to work, want to work, and have been working competently, why not? Why not?
And from your point of view, I mean, you say, both of you, that you've been working with a remarkable woman.
She's been extraordinary. She's been incredibly, well, brave is the word I use, because she's spoken several times about feeling nervous and her stomach churning, but each time she got up, she gave her evidence brilliantly at the tribunal, and she's persevered, even though she's been frightened to do so.
Yes, she was fantastic. You were very nervous beforehand, weren't you?
Yes.
And we couldn't have asked for more. She's answered every question in the way that I hoped she would.
Yeah.
I love that move. We always say on here, sort of age shouldn't be a barrier to absolutely anything. It's my mum that was a bit of an inspiration to you as well.
Absolutely. I hope you will tell her.
She
been
watches
watching.
every day.
She will be
She'll be
watching.
watching now.
It was her wing
How was
walk.
she an inspiration?
She was. As soon as I saw her, I thought, oh, she's absolutely brilliant. I want to do the
So
same.
this is my mum who, in her 80s, did a wing walk, and it was the wing walk that you saw that you
Yes.
thought, and this is...
I want to do that too. I mean, that was inspirational to anybody, the fact that she got
There's
up
my
there.
mum. Would you? So what you'd like? So that's something you want to do, is it?
Yes, I have Googled the nearest place to
Yeah.
where I live, and they have certain things you have to meet.
Yeah.
And one of them is being below a certain weight, so I've got to lose weight.
Oh,
Well, I hope you get up there. 'cause
I
she
do as
absolutely
well. I
loved
do.
it. And thank you, all of you.
Lovely to
And
meet
well
you,
done.
and thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Lovely
much.
to meet you.
And
Thank you.